So once you move your cross travel over, you have plenty of play with the nozzle down for when you come back over and it's up, you still can get both readings correctly. You're going to start your arbor to nozzle offset. You'll be measuring the X. The slow button will be your best friend. So what you want to do is come touch the left side of the shaft just a little bit. Sometimes you got to play with it. So once you move in, you'll see the dial move, and sometimes you got to use the 1 thou button. I usually do. Once you find it is touching, you want to hit the slow button. Run the Z up and down until you find the high spot, which would be right about there. Then you'll go back to the 1 thou button, use your X minus until you get to 0. Once you're at 0, you'll go hit user 0 on the screen. So you'll hit the user 0 button, and that'll clear all these values out. So after you hit user 0, you'll come back, drive the machine away, take it all the way up. Once it's all the way up, we can drop the nozzle. It will not drop if the Z is not all the way up. So to drop the nozzle, you hit the setup, and then you go into the setup tab, hit jet setup enable, and then you'll go to nozzle and hit down. You'll come back over here, drive your X towards the dial, once it touches, you'll sweep in the Y direction, plus and minus, until you find the high spot. Use the 1 thou button with the X minus until you hit 0, and then you'll record that measurement from the screen and change the offset. So on the arbor to nozzle, after you've touched both points, your X will be the value you need to take. So you go into setup, go into the advanced screen, machine offsets, arbor to nozzle, and it'll be 17,094. Hit OK. The system will power off. Alright, so when starting the nozzle to A, you're in a very tight area. You got to watch the bolt here, make sure you don't hit the miter box over there in any direction. If you do bump it, don't get frustrated, just restart, try it in a different position, and it'll work out. So when you're in this position, you'll want to drive your Y negative until you hit. Then you'll run your Z up and down to find the high spot, just right there. Then you'll use the 1 thou and the Y negative to get to your 0. As you've seen, that dial jumped a little bit. That's totally normal. So you'll hit the user 0 button, and that'll clear all these values out. Once that's done, you'll have to drive pretty much directly straight up. I always use the slow button until I make sure I clear everything, which it looks like I am. So then you take it up. Once you clear the dial, you can drive back and across. Once you are in a clear position again, you can drop the nozzle. So to drop the nozzle, you hit the setup, and then you go into the setup tab, hit Jet Setup Enable, and then you'll go to Nozzle and hit down. Once the nozzle drops, you can drive back in to the dial. Once you get close, you'll want to use the slow button and then lightly touch. So once you're touching, you'll use the 1 thou button, and then you'll use the slow button and the X to find your high spot. Sometimes the slow button is still too fast, so use the 1 thou button and just keep clicking the X in either direction to find your high spot. Once you find it, you'll use the Y minus to bring the dial to 0. So once you have 0 on the dial, you'll come back over to the operation screen. Your Y will be your value that you're going to put into the offset, so 17828. You'll go to the setup screen. In the advanced tab, machine offsets, nozzle to A. You click that, 17.828. Click OK. The system will power down and it's saved. So for the C to Arbor, you're going to be measuring X. You want to drive in X minus till you just touch. Sweep with the Z till you find your high spot. 1 thou X minus till you're at 0, and then hit user 0. So you'll hit the user 0 button, and that'll clear all these values out. So after you hit user 0, you'll go X plus, just to make sure you clear everything. Then you'll hit Y plus. You want to go quite a ways back because the C axis is actually going to turn all the way around. So once you get back to where you think you can safely turn, stop, go to the screen, deactivate the pendant, change C to 180, and turn it. Reactivate the pendant, and then you'll have to go further over to the X plus to clear all the motor and the jet. Then you'll hit Y minus until you clear the jet nozzle. Once you clear that, you'll use the X minus and bring it to the shaft. So once you clear all that, the jet and the motor, you'll need to drive into the X negative direction until you hit the shaft. Once you hit the shaft, you'll run the Z up and down until you find the high spot. Once you find it, use the 1 thou button and then click the X minus button until you hit 0. So for the C to Arbor, your X value is what you're going to need to put into the offset. So you'll take the 0.029, go into setup, and then it'll be C to Arbor, 0.029, hit OK. Power drops, it's saved. So this one's the Arbor to A, and you'll be measuring the Z. So you'll need to touch the bottom of the shaft with the dial. Once you find the high spot, using your X, you will hold the 1 thou button and then Z down to 0. Once you get to 0, you'll hit user 0 on the screen. So you'll hit the user 0 button, and that'll clear all these values out. Once you hit user 0, you can drive Z up, X in the positive direction, and then Y in the negative direction. Then you'll drop Z down. You want to be careful not to catch the side of the miter box. So it does get tight. Then you'll need to go touch the bottom of the pin, and then sweep in the Y directions to find your high spot on the pin. Once you find the high spot, use the 1 thou button and Z down to 0. So the Z is your value. It is a negative number, but ignore the negative. We are only after the numbers. So 2.441, you'll take setup, click Arbor to A, 2.441, click OK, power drops, it's saved. So this is the flange to A. You want to make sure this flange is all the way up against the arbor, nice and tight. You use the slow button, Y negative, until you touch. Then you'll use the 1 thou with the Y negative to get to 0. There's no need to swipe on the flange because it's already flat. Once you get 0, you'll hit user 0 and drive to the back pin. You'll hit the user 0 button, and that'll clear all these values out. So you use X positive and then Y negative to get to the back pin. Being sure not to hit anything on the way. Z down. Y negative to the side of the pin until you touch. Then sweep in the Z positive and negative directions till you find the high spot. Use the 1 thou button with Y negative to get to 0. So the Y is going to be your value, negative 17.25. Again, forget about the negative. Go into setup. On this machine it is already that value, so there's no need to change it. If it were different, then you would need to change it. So this one's the A to C. You're measuring the Y. So you'll want to just touch the pin, sweep your Z up and down until you find the high spot. Use the 1 thou button with Y negative until you hit 0. And then you'll hit user 0 on the screen. User 0 button, and that'll clear all these values out. So once you hit user 0, you'll want to drive away in the X positive direction until you're not hitting anything anymore. Then go in the Y positive direction until you're, I would say, 3/4 of the way back on the table, because the C is going to turn 180 and bring everything to the front. And this is a good time too, you can run your X negative just to kind of get it closer to lined up to where it'll be. Turn C to 180. Once it's at 180, activate the pendant again and drive towards the pin in the Y direction. Then the X direction just to get lined up. Keep driving in the Y negative direction until you hit the pin. Once you hit the pin, use the Z positive and negative to find your high spot. Once you have the high spot, use the 1 thou button with Y negative until you hit 0. So for the A to C value, it's going to be the Y, 35.052. Go into setup, go to A to C, 35.052, hit OK, power dropped, it's saved.